containing COVID. We do have the Attorney General was able to call in, but I wanted to just read this, and I really appreciate him calling in. With everything we said, I think that this is something that he's gonna have to sell it to the public. You know what I mean? But I just wanted to do this Facebook post from the victim. Now it was there were a whole apartment complex of victims. We were able to interview the wife of this gentleman who posted on his Facebook yesterday after getting the update that the two perps were released. Update, got off the phone with the AG's office, and the two punks will be released back into the community at 6 p.m. tonight. I am losing all hope with Guam's justice system because they said the case will be looked at after the COVID-19 lockdown. I guess my family's lives can be brushed off that easily. This means I will have to take matters into my own hands. I might need some help because they will be back. And so I want to bring AG Camacho. AG, first of all, thanks for calling in and addressing this.
Yeah, no problem, Chris.
So how would you respond first to that victim? Because, with Chief Ignacio, obviously he seemed kind of frustrated and that, they're going out, they're making their arrest. And maybe if you could just explain to the public where you guys are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, are you hearing an echo on your side? Sorry, I'm just
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. We can.
Okay. We know that, I don't have to repeat that we have COVID-19 issues on Guam, and that we know that it spreads much more easily when there's a large concentration of people in confined spaces. And, just listening to the news, you have the aircraft carrier that's here. You talk about cruise ships. And prisons, unfortunately, would meet those criteria. So we know nationally that that COVID-19 would be a huge threat to anyone who's in prison, and an introduction of COVID-19 at DOC would be terrible not only for the correctional officers and the prisoners there, but also for the island because we're trying to buy time and increase capacity as well as testing. So we've made a decision as we look through every individual case, and there's going to be a spectrum, but the easiest one would be nonviolent offenses. The presumption is that they will be booked and released, and they'll be given an NTA to appear. And after things start going back to normal, we'll start reviewing those cases and charging where appropriate. And then on the other extreme would be the most violent offenses, which would be rape, murder. If those kinds of offenses are happening, obviously we're going to ask for a book and confine. But, there's a lot of cases that are kind of in between. So property crime, as an example, if someone goes out and bashes your car, you could say it's violent because it's property and someone's doing a violent act, but it's not neatly within the nonviolent or rape or murder. So that's where we have to rely on our prosecutors to exercise their discretion right now. And, the guidance that we're being given is to try to minimize as much as we can introduction of anyone with COVID-19 into DOC. So we're doing the best that we can. I'm aware of this one case. We're looking and seeing what happened. But I can tell you that we get the reports from GPD, we review it, and that's what we base our decision off of.
So based on the report that you received, this wasn't violent enough for somebody to go and break into somebody's house, and knowing the victim said that this is the same group of people that came just a couple weeks ago and stole their car.
I haven't seen the police reports, Sabrina, and I don't think you have either. So I can't really say in terms of how this investigation was handled or what was given.
I didn't need to see the police report because we spoke with the victim.
I understand, but our office doesn't get to speak with the victims. We have to rely on the reports that we
Don't you guys have a victim or some kind of victim helpline or something that you guys talk to victims, AG?
Yes, we do. So after we received the reports, and I believe that's what the victim mentioned, that our office contacted him or the family. So they're doing the best that they can, but when we get information, our police reports, that's what we have to base these decisions off of. So could things, was there a potential mistake that was made in this process? We're going to look at it. Obviously, we're 30 days in right now, and this is the first case that I'm aware of where there's a victim that's extremely upset, and then again there's a spectrum of property crime to violent crime. So we're going to look and see what happened in this particular case, and to make sure that we do everything that we can to make that we're doing the right thing. But I just think people need to understand that there's a arrest, we get a call, we get reports, we make a decision based off the reports that we receive. But we're not the people on the ground, on the floor, or on the ground.
Are you throwing the GPD officers under the bus for the report, or?
Not at all. They're having to prepare their reports, and again, I think people need to understand the system. If you have multiple officers that are responding, we're trying to get the reports, to download the reports, to review the reports, to make decisions. So if we get a report that's an interview with the victim that comes in after a decision has been made, then we have to figure out a way that that's not going to happen. But my understanding is that the decision was made based on the information that we had at the time. And again, if there's things that need to be corrected, then we'll do that.
What would your message be to those victims out there who are now having to digest this information that, the AG's office, I mean, you guys have discretion all the time, I understand that. But that, the message it sends to these criminals that, DOC's got COVID, because it's a clear message, AG. Now people think that they're not going to go to jail if they commit crimes. And that's just the reality of it.
Until we come up with more testing, I mean, and again, this is not just limited to DOC. As an island, we need more testing. But, you're talking about 700 prisoners, probably dozens of correctional officers. And then on top of that, once we hit, the 15 ICU beds, we're going to see a lot more people dying. So that's the balance that we have to strike. And that's not an easy one to do. Obviously, if we were not in a situation where we had COVID-19, things would be different. But that's not where we're at right now. So we're going to do the best that we can given the constraints that we're given. But, there's no easy solution. Either you're going to potentially put everyone at risk on the island and in DOC, or you're going to have to make some of these tough calls. But again, this is somewhere within the spectrum. Possession of drugs that we normally would book and confine, or drug dealer. I mean, don't commit crime, and we're seeing most people are following the governor's orders, and we're going to do our best again to improve on the process. But we're 30 days in right now. This is one case within the last 30 days, and again, I feel for the victim. I mean, our office has already reached out. We're going to keep those lines of communication open and do what we can. But the courts are closed, guys, and there's no trials. They've suspended everything until May 6th. They've suspended the grand jury proceedings until May 6th. So it's not just an AG's office, a GPD office. The entire criminal justice system on Guam and around the country is having to deal with this. And we're all in line with the measures that we're taking.
Yeah, but it's the members of the public that are really having to deal with it because, criminals are being set free. And in this specific case, no matter what the police report said, the victim said that there was a threat made to their perps were like, we're going to kill you guys. And so I'm not really, I know the discretion, right?
I mean, you guys have access to stuff that we don't, get to go out and to interview victims within the time of, that's something, again, we have to rely on GPD to do. So.
For clarification, is everybody getting issued an
No.
notice to appear?
No, not everyone. So there have been cases where we have booked and confined, and we've requested that they be held pending cash bail.
And can you just go over again the criteria on how the prosecutors decide?
Again, you have nonviolent offenses, which
what's nonviolent?
Possession of a controlled substance would probably be an easiest one. If you are caught with pipe and residue, we're not going to ask for you to be booked and confined and brought MAGI right now. On the other end of the spectrum, rape. If you are accused of sexual assault, we're going to request that you be booked and confined.
What about, so this was this terrorizing, was this the charges that these two guys were facing?
Again, Chris, I don't have the police reports in front of me. I haven't looked at the police reports. I don't know what was in there. I know based on the report that you've given, there were threats that were made. That's in your report. There's damaged property. But what I read was that there was a report of people damaging vehicles, and then it escalated because someone went out and confronted them. So I don't know the specifics of it. I don't know what the evidence is going to support in terms of charging.
But you can see how this would look to people out there.
Absolutely, Chris. And again, I am frustrated too. Our prosecutors are frustrated because we want to be doing our jobs, but this is what we're trying to balance at the end of the day. And you can go in and you can book and confine it. That's the one person that's positive for COVID-19, and now we've put hundreds of people's lives in danger. So that is the balance that our prosecutors are having to strike every day, and it's not an easy one to do because we're not operating under normal circumstances. So the sooner that we can get back into our courts being open, trials happening, then that'll be good for everyone, including victims. We want that as much as anybody else does.
We had a comment here on our Facebook, AG. Why was this issue not addressed in the first place? Now it comes to this. Was this a case of poor planning? You mentioned we're 30 days in. We're and I know the developments at DLC with COVID are a little more recent, but was this idea of not confining nonviolent offenders something that had been in place since we started the COVID measures?
Yes. I mean, the courts already started scaling back, I believe, March 16. They had one day that I think that they did essential trials, but everyone has been trying to adapt to this and to listen. You can't social isolate in prison. There's not a bunch of hand sanitizers in prison. So I think everyone across the country has recognized the potential danger that introduction of COVID-19 into our prison system would pose. The courts also have suspended anyone reporting who normally report on the weekend to go to DOC. They've suspended that through May 6th. So I think the entire criminal justice system has had to adjust, knowing just how much of a threat it would be if someone were to have COVID-19 and were to be incarcerated at this point.
What would your message be to those would-be criminals out there who are listening to this and,
thinking they're going to get a free pass?
Yeah, I mean, okay, property crime's okay. We can go bash cars, that's cool, okay. Possession, yep. Selling drugs, got it, green light. You know what I'm saying, AG? I mean, that's kind of what the message is.
We're going to hold people accountable. And once we can go back to, once we've established a more robust testing capabilities and we've increased our ICU, it's just a matter of time before we start to phase back in. And when that does, we are monitoring these cases and we're prepared to charge them. We just want to do so in a safe way.
Mm-hmm. Now that we talked about the arrestees, what about the pretrial detainees that are already inside DOC? Are you guys monitoring who's being released?
I know that there's a process for that, and ultimately, once a case has been initiated, the decision to release is left up to the courts. Mm-hmm. We're working with the courts and with public defenders to see, and again, it will be non-violent offenders. We are looking at everything on a case-by-case basis. We're not releasing any violent offenders.
AG, I know that you said that you didn't have this case file in front of you, but is this something that when I don't know if you're working remotely, is this something you're going to look through it and maybe make a determination if the prosecutor made the right call, or is it just a done deal?
Again, I don't think people realize just what our prosecutors have to go through every day. So we're going to look into see if there is a way that we can improve the communication, and if we didn't get information or there was information that was out there and somehow our office missed it, we'll review it. But we're aware of it. If a mistake was made, then we're going to address it. Okay,
it's a tough pill to swallow, but hey, I think if people hear that you wanna at least do the right thing,
maybe even just respond to what the chief of police said, that victims are now feeling that they're being victimized by
the criminal justice system.
Yeah. Again, we're trying to get back to things as being as normal as we can as soon as we can. And I feel for the victims. I would hate to be in the position that they're in right now. I've read through your story, the other accounts, and it sounds terrifying. But I just think people need to understand. Our office is making decisions based on the information that we have. We're not saying criminals all go out there and commit crimes now. And I guess if we get to the point where you're right and that's what people are doing, then we're going to have to book and confine at that point. And you're right, maybe DOC will just have to figure it out, or a government will have to figure it out. But I would hate to be the person that we put someone in DOC who's COVID-19 positive, and we end up with
but AG,
positive now.
Would you hate to be the person who releases a criminal who goes back to the scene of the crime and murders someone?
Absolutely. And again, murder is not one of those kinds of things where we're not going to ask for an NTA to come back in 3 years. So. Right.
But in this case specifically, AG, where you have the threats were made, we talked to the victim. I know you didn't talk to the victim, but you release these guys, and if they go back to the scene of the crime and do something, God forbid, we shouldn't wait for them to have to kill somebody so they can go to jail. But if that happens,
Chris, if it escalates, and again, it's clear that there's an assault or there's a serious violent act, there's going to be a book and confine. Not in this case or any other case. I just didn't. Again, I have only seen what the reports have said, where there was damage to vehicles, and I saw a picture of a rock through a window. I don't know what reports our office had a chance to review before making the decision. But if there is a violent act, we're going to charge it out, and we're going to ask for confinement.
Okay, so just so we're clear, then the decision is made based. The decisions are made on the NTAs, on the individual prosecutors, based on the reports that they see that are filed by the police department.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's whether now or before. That's always the way it's been happening.
Okay. I wanted to move on and just ask you really quickly. The governor, she's been saying this, that her decisions that she's been making is based on AG's input. Regarding these stepped-up social distancing measures, such as the limiting of travel, implementing checkpoints, mandatory curfew. Can you explain what she's talking about?
Sabrina, I feel I heard this example that the house is on fire and there are some people who are worrying that maybe we're using too much water to put it out. We're 30 days in. I think the governor is implementing these measures based on recommendations by her medical team and public health officials to try to get us to the testing implementation. So she can enter these orders, and she cited to Title 10, Chapter 19 under her, because we are in a public health emergency, an unprecedented one. But what that chapter does not provide for is an enforcement mechanism. So Chief was just on, and I've talked to him before about, AG, what do we do if we go to the beach and there's a party of 20 people, and they're basically saying you can't do anything. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do about it, right? So that's the reality of the people that are on the ground trying to do their best to make sure people are following the governor's directives. And as of right now, there is no mechanism for that.
Okay.
Everything's on our system at this point. So.
What about the suspension of the open government law, AG? Was that necessary?
Again, this is something that's happening across the country where it's harder to have face-to-face meetings, and I'm sure that as we get back to normal, if agencies can put together social distancing measures and make sure no one's within 6 feet of one another, whether it's necessary or not, I think there are some agencies that need to continue to conduct business. And I'm hopeful that we'll figure out a way to move forward with technology. My understanding is that we're hosting on our website meetings that are being held. There's been about 3 that I've seen. So I'm not sure the concern over the last 30 days for what exactly people are worried about.
Okay.
Well, thanks, AG, for providing that clarification to the listeners and the public and the victims and the criminals.
Well, I mean, again, we're doing our best, guys. I don't know what to say. We've been told that there's a huge concern about what it would mean for our healthcare system, not individuals, but our healthcare system, if there was an outbreak of COVID-19 in prison. So we are trying to make that determination on a case-by-case basis with the information that we have. It's not going to make anyone happy. I mean, we're not happy with it. I'm sure victims are not happy with it. No one's happy with it right now. But once we can get back to normal, things are going to correct.
Okay. Well, thanks, AG. Yeah, you're right. That's a tough one to put out there. But, obviously the people in charge have come up with this, and we just got to deal with it. Yep. Okay, AG, thanks.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Yeah, wash your hands. All right. Well, there you go. AG Leevin Camacho. Boy, that was a lot to take on. I need to decompress.
I know. I think you need to go to a break or something.
Yeah, we're going to go to a break, and we're coming back with former Senator Dennis Rodriguez and talk about something he's pitching that involves mass community testing and the Speaker Tina Munia Barnes' COVID-19.
I was going to say, so it looks like we need to start a DOC so we can just go to break.
Okay, we'll be back. It's Containing COVID. Hey, we're KUAM FM, Hagatni, Guam. Good morning.